The situation is difficult, as the Israeli ambassador said, because Israel has been forced to evacuate its towns in the north because of the Hezbollah bombardment. But that began with the Israeli attack on Gaza. And if there was to be a ceasefire in Gaza, there would be a ceasefire with Hezbollah. But up to now, Israel has not accepted either a ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza and the return of the remaining hostages, nor seems to be interested in a ceasefire with Hezbollah. And as Netanyahu said, he's continued to use full force. There are two routes to a ceasefire here. One is the Gaza route, that we actually move forward, and at the moment the situation in Gaza appears stalled. Israel seems to accept that it cannot achieve its objectives there and has therefore turned its fire north. Or alternatively, that there comes to be a stalemate on the northern border, because the Israelis hesitate to actually invade Lebanon. But we're not at that point yet. Israel is demonstrating its military and intelligence superiority by taking out Hezbollah's senior commanders and trying to degrade its capacity to launch missiles into northern Lebanon, but so far without success.
Hezbollah aren't the only political operatives in Lebanon. What are other political operatives in Lebanon saying about what's happening?
That's a very good point, because Lebanon has a rather dysfunctional political system in which Hezbollah is the dominant force, partly because it has the strongest military force in the country and operates outside the political system to some extent. So there is purely interim government, primarily technocratic. There is no political mechanism within Lebanon that can bring sufficient force to bear on Hezbollah to say this is not in the country's wider interest, you should stop bombarding Israel. And that just doesn't exist at the moment.
So to what extent then are Hezbollah really, although they operate outside of the so-called political system in Lebanon, they are actually functionally in charge of it?
Certainly of the southern part. They don't claim to have any control in the north, only the areas where they have majority support amongst the people. It's a political movement. It has a lot of political support. The Lebanese people who are suffering under Israeli bombardment may not be happy with the position Hezbollah is taking. Not all of them. You hear some on the radio saying we're right behind Hezbollah, and others saying we wish it would just stop. But at the moment, there's no mechanism for that public discontent yet to sort of push the Hezbollah leadership to stop firing.
And who would the Hezbollah leadership respond to or turn to or seek justification from?
They would listen to Iran.
Yeah.
Though Iran do not have full control, so they will still take their own decisions. And as I say, if there was a ceasefire in Gaza, there would almost undoubtedly be a ceasefire on the northern border. But Israel has chosen not to pursue that route to stopping the firing coming. They're like the man with a hammer. Everything is a nail. And because they've got a bigger hammer than anybody else in the region, they just keep using it. But that won't bring a political solution, which is the only way to get a genuine, lasting ceasefire. And Gaza and Lebanon actions of Hezbollah are linked.
So what do you think the strategic aim is for a potential ground invasion of Lebanon?
What Netanyahu has said, he will continue, Israel will continue using full force until they achieve their full objectives, which is to return their people to the north. Yes. In other words, get Hezbollah to stop firing rockets. And if they cannot do that by bombardment from the air, they may feel the only way is to go in on the ground and destroy the rocket launchers on the ground, or at least push them so far north that they can't hit Israel anymore. But we know from 2006 and the previous invasions that the game changes completely once they cross the border. Then Hezbollah is defending Lebanese national territory against an invader, and their popularity will go up. The destruction will increase, but Israel then becomes an aggressor as opposed to merely responding to Hezbollah aggression. So, and the risk is, again, they get mired. They can never win a war in Lebanon. They will demolish as much as they can. They either then stay there for years, as they did before, until it becomes intolerable, or they pull back out, and Hezbollah just fill in the space again. So their objective is to stop the missiles being fired, but the only way to do that is actually a political solution to achieve a ceasefire, not the military one, in my view.
Nick, fascinating to talk to you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. Professor Nick Westcott, Professor of Practice in Diplomacy at SOAS and a former British Ambassador.